I have a brand new video for you, and I have a very special guest here. It's Mark Reilly.
Oh, hi.
I'm so happy you're here right now.
This is great. I've always wanted to join you for something extra that's outside of Collider, and this is really fun.
Yeah.
And a perfect kind of thing, I'm sure.
The funny thing is, the one time Clark Wolf was on this channel, do you know what we spoke about? The Shining.
Oh my God, you talked about The Shining. Of course you did.
So it makes a whole lot of sense that I have Mark Reilly here to talk about 11/22/63. So
Stephen King action.
You know my my thing with Stephen King books right now is I never read enough of them, and all of a sudden I've basically been obsessed, been burning through them, and when I hit the end of, I think it was Dr. Sleep, and I was really sad Dr. Sleep was over, I went to the one and only, and like, what do I do next? And you suggested 11/22/63.
Oh,
so
yeah, I did.
'Tis a favorite, right?
It might be my favorite Stephen King book, which is so weird to think that it might be my favorite. I mean, I constantly go back to it. We'll get into it, but it's just a story that really stuck with me, which is interesting to say because it's kind of a pretty simple time travel, stop something in the past kind of, you've heard these stories before. Go back in time, stop something awful, save the future. And this is what that is, but it's the characters that I liked.
I think what I appreciated about it most is I think it does function as a really great high concept log line that is very sellable and easy to convey, but when you actually dig into it, there were certain time travel rules that I think I've never really considered or thought about particularly deeply that this story brings to light that I will then carry with me to any other time travel type film, book, story, anything at all, and I'm going to start to rethink certain things.
Right. That's what King did so well in this book is the time travel elements and like some of like the gatekeepers that are there. That's an interesting twist to the time travel plot. Like what he says of time travel, it's like you could change one outcome, but it's like a string and it becomes an alternate reality. And then another one, and the butterfly effect, obviously, that we get there. We get to at the end of this book. I don't want to spoil anything yet.
Not yet. But to keep us in non-spoiler territory for just a little longer, I will reiterate something I've said with many Stephen King books, and it's one of the reasons I think I'm really drawn to his writing is, there's a great story, a great idea, a core concept at the middle of whatever we're talking about.
Right.
But one of the things he does better than any author that I've seen yet is building the world around it. Enveloping you in whatever situation, whatever town, whatever group of people that you're spending this story with. He is just exceptional at building out worlds, fleshing it out to such a detailed extent that, yes, that means you're listening to, let's say, a 30-hour audiobook compared to an 8-hour one, but in the end, the reward is just through the roof compared to some of the other shorter audiobooks I've listened to.
Yeah, and he actually brought on, I don't have her name, but one of his researchers that did a lot of work on the years 1958, obviously, did 1963, and just everything down to how much it cost for a cup of coffee, to like what they wore, to what the money looked like. And that's so important, especially in this, when you're going back to a period, it does feel so lived in. And it's great because he's able to fill in all that research and use it. And then you're Jake Epping going back in time, and you're that going, oh my God, I can't believe this is 25 cents for a cup of coffee. I can't believe this, and that.
One of the things that this book made me feel a little bad about is my lack of knowledge of history. So I was a good student. You could give me a long list of facts or a chapter in a textbook to read, and I would nail it. I would nail the test and everything. But once the test was done, disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
Completely disappeared. And, I knew the basics of what he was doing, but there's certain specifics of that scenario that they bring up, and I'm like, how did I forget that?
Yeah, no, I tend to be like that too, but I'm lucky in the sense that my father was a history teacher before he became a lawyer. So he's been a big history buff. So especially the 50s, especially the 60s, which was like my dad's time, that seems to have stayed with me. So there was a lot of stuff that I learned in this book, but that I was able to, I kind of love my history. So I know what you mean, but I'm glad. This is the book, though, to do that. If you love that time period, it's great to go in there. And also to see some of the connections to other Stephen King stories. That's what Stephen King does so well.
All right. If you're going to bring that up,
this is the spoiler,
the spoiler line. I am drawing it right here. It's going to happen right now because I'm about to tell you my favorite scene in the entire book, and it's a big fat spoiler.
It is. It's huge.
All right.
It is.
Here, it's coming. It's when we get to see Bev and
Richie, yep, in Derry.
Do you remember my reaction when I came into the office
Yep.
and I had just listened to it that morning and I was freaking out? And it's not just a fan service type thing either. It's about setting up the tone of the town of Derry and him first experiencing the dread and the
yes.
sinister nature of Derry as a town. But it's also foreboding for the entire thing too. It's even though he's got noble intentions and he does find love and some success along the way, there's this underlining sinisterness to is that a
Sure.
word?
Sinisterness.
To the whole story, and I feel like that scene in particular really gets the ball rolling and sets that in firmly.
It's really amazing when I was reading, I read the actual hard copy, I didn't do the audiobook, and when Bev and Richie showed up, I was like, what? And he had set it up because he had set up when he does enter Derry, he specifically said, there's a dread about this town.
Yeah.
I feel it. And you're like, because I think he teases, you might remember better than me because it's been a while since I read the book, but he teases, he doesn't really say it's Derry until we kind of get the kids. I mean, maybe that wasn't true. I can't remember. But there was that kind of filling in the blank that once Bev and Richie were there, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. I think he might have mentioned
Derry.
going to Derry or the town name of Derry beforehand, but
Right.
it doesn't feel, having read it takes on a completely different feeling when you reunite with Bev and Richie. And Bev and Richie in particular, their personalities are so strong, and their connection together is something too.
It's
and
great.
You see that. You see the two of them playing off each other. You see some of their personality that you grew to love in the It book.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then when you throw Jake into the mix and his back and forth with them, there's something about those three characters that they're all on a very similar wavelength. And I really appreciated that touch.
I feel like it was Bev and Richie kind of seeing somebody, though Jake is a man at a time, they sense a good person.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's there. I mean, this is him going back to save Harry, or his family at least. So he's looking for Frank. I did a little bit of research on, or just to refresh my memory, and there was a great Reddit thread I went on that makes perfect sense, is that Pennywise has Frank. That he's,
of course.
he is Pennywise was the reason, again, spoilers, a character in the book, Frank, murders his family and debilitates one of Jake's future students in the GED class, and he takes a liking to Harry, and so he wants to, when he goes back, he wants to save Harry, which is so interesting. And so when you add that thread of Pennywise and the dread of the town and Bev and Richie, you're like, Pennywise did this. You can do the time frame and go, wait a minute, it did take place in 1958. That's when Jake goes back, so Pennywise is there.
Yeah.
He catches it right at the intersection of the story of Pennywise, and that to me is like, you don't need to have that mean anything in the sense of the story of 11/22/63, but if you're a Stephen King fan, you're a Pennywise It fan, you're like, whoa, it fills in the blanks.
Well, one of the touches about that I think worked really well for the rest of the story too is you get that evil sense in Derry, and then you also get the, I forget the specific word he used to refer to this, but when you're changing time, that time is going to stop you.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kind of
What was
vibe,
that?
even though that didn't manifest into a physical form like Pennywise,
Right.
they felt very similar to me. I bring up Final Destination constantly.
No, that's very-
It's kind of like that. That's
It
what I
is.
kept envisioning, I guess, or feeling.
Yeah, you're referring to like basically this butterfly effect that
Yeah.
once Jake starts to make attempts at changing time and changes just by him being there, that butterfly effect when he meets the different characters.
There's a phrase he uses.
I
all the
know,
time.
and I
can't
just
remember it
heard
right now.
it's with a C. I want to say it
With a
starts with a
C?
C. I don't remember. But anyways, you can feel time pushes back. That's the great thing about you referenced it at the beginning. It's that this is a time traveling book, sure, and he's there to change the past so the future is better. But time is literally going, wait a minute, and we'll get there for the end. It's like, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you have the yellow hat man, yellow card man. Who kind of warns them that the gatekeepers of time basically are these guys that have cards in their hat. And what does this start out? Green? It starts out green.
It starts out when Al tells him about it. I think he calls him the yellow card man. So it starts out as yellow. Then I believe it turns orange, and then I think it goes black.
It goes black,
and then at the end it goes back to green.
It goes, so it's like green, and it's like this.
I believe I've tracked that right.
Yes, you're right. It's like the effects of the portal take a toll on the gatekeeper, and it's this person wearing a hat with a card. And the green, you're kind of healthy. Yellow, it's kind of down. Orange, black, you're dead. You're gone. And they can go mentally crazy.
Yeah.
They can become lunatics, alcoholics. I mean, it's just, that's such a fascinating mythology thing, this perfect Stephen King, by adding a gatekeeper for time.
There's
I love
a lot of things that he builds into time travel here that I think were really kind of ingenious concepts that enrich something that we've seen time and time again. But another thing that I think makes the whole time travel element really powerful is that Jake himself is a really likable character that you're rooting for. He's smart, he's capable, you believe he can pull this off, and then he creates such warm, inviting relationships with so many different characters he meets along the way.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about a loving relationship like Sadie, and even some of the other more, I guess, kind of evil figures he meets along the way that pose a threat to him. There's still that kind of charisma and chemistry to their relationships that it just enriches the entire world around him, and it makes him a really fascinating and easy and natural person to track throughout this entire thing.
Yeah, well, that's what King does so well. I mean, just by the introduction of Jake, you meet him, he's a good guy, he's divorced, he's teaching kids to get their GED, and not kids, but older people that want to go back and finish their schooling, and he's so passionate about that. You immediately like him, and so that when he goes back into time, well, he meets Al. Al is essentially the real gatekeeper who discovers the portal, and Jake, which is of course my way in, is like, these burgers are so good. Where do you get this? Oh, I don't know how you can charge hamburgers at this price. And it's, well, Al was going back in time and grabbing meat from 58 and bringing it back into 2011 to serve his famous hamburgers. I'm like, well, I'm in.
I mean, that in itself is
such a genius
worth an entire movie.
It really is. It's such a genius character trait that King puts in, where it's like, you have this guy that's essentially going back in time to get hamburgers. But of course, you get more from Al as the story progresses.
Yeah.
But that's just something really nice that just makes a lot of sense to me.
And those relationships also complicate his plan along the way too. Jake is out there to do this one specific thing, and every single thing you learn about time travel then connects to all these relationships he's made, and it threatens those while also threatening the overall mission. And do you do the greater good, or do you focus on this one individual that you really want to save and have a connection to? And when all of that comes together, it just creates such a suspenseful, engaging story, and that's why I fell for this one so much.
That's exactly why I fell for it, and I was trying to think why. As when you asked me to do this, I was like, oh yeah, I would love to talk about this. But I kept trying to go back. It's like, why did I say that this Stephen King story is one of my favorites? And it's all around Sadie and his relationship.
Yeah.
It really is, because the book, and I'll follow your lead as far as spoilers, like completely spoiling it, but the relationship he has with Sadie, again, a man at a time falling in love with a woman, and the greater good that you talked about, save the world essentially by taking out Lee Harvey Oswald and saving Kennedy. And what does that do to somebody he falls in love with? And their relationship is so beautiful. It's so sweet. It's so sincere. Sadie was in an abusive relationship. She has shades of Bev, which I got. This is like a Stephen King kind of staple.
It's also the mirror effect that he constantly talks about. Maybe not mirror, but like the time repeats itself. Something
it's like
along
echoes.
the lines. Echoes.
I got that.
He refers to it as echoes.
Yes, and Sadie was that anchor to me. That was really when the heart came in, and I'm like, I care so much. So Jake falls in love with Sadie, who's back in time, right? He's from 2011, 1958 on to 1963. He falls in love with her. They start working together. Then I'm like, genuinely like, how is this going to end? Because that's time travel stopped Kennedy's assassination. That's very interesting. But when you add a beautiful love story in the center of it, that's where I went. That's what anchored me. That's what got my heart just in the tension, because he's bringing Sadie along on this adventure, ultimately tells her everything, which is fantastic. And then you're like, oh my God, You're barreling towards the end. It's a date and time, 11/22/63. Unavoidable, destiny. Jake is there. Sadie's involved. What's going to happen? That the end of the book is one of the best things I've ever read. Just completely, unexpectedly subverted my expectations. I was just like, wait, this is the end? Unbelievable.
Yep, I will second that. And that leads me nicely into a little fun question, given the ending of the book.
Okay.
Is if you could go back in time and change anything, what would it be and why?
Oh man, but time will push back.
Yeah, so you got to consider that.
I know.
You know, a bigger change could have maybe a negative ripple effect that you might not expect. But if you want to go back and change something, you know, itty bitty, maybe you got better chances.
I know. Oh my gosh. You know, I think there's things flash in my mind. One, the funny one is go back in time and breed Cal. That is one of the things I would not neuter my dog Cal. I would breed him, and I would have little Cal puppies, and then I would keep the trend alive. So I'd have the Cal bloodline, you know, Kal-El, last dog of Krypton, all through time. That would be the fun one.
That idea belongs on this channel.
Yes, it does. As far as like bigger consequences or bigger, here's the sappy one. I would love to be able to go back in time and warn my grandfather, who I never got to meet, who died of cancer. I would want him to go get it checked out because my grandfather just was like one of those men in the 50s, you know, strong men that didn't check his health and, you know, unfortunately never got to meet my grandfather. That'd be a big one. But that would, of course, ripple all through my family, who my grandmother, who then fell in love and met another nice gentleman who did become my grandmother. Well, you see what we're getting at right here? You say one thing, you change one thing, and that ripple effect, that butterfly effect can just change everything to where you will go back to the future and it's completely different.
Exactly.
It's a completely different thing. But I'm going to keep thinking. What are yours?
Well, that's kind of why my mind went to a super small example that I don't think would have that ripple butterfly effect type thing. And as you well know, I went to sleepaway camp.
Right.
But when I went to sleepaway camp as a kid, I don't think I enjoyed it to its fullest.
Okay.
I think I was like a little bit of a baby and I was homesick. And now that I'm older and I am very capable of flying across the country and being away from home, and I'm still super into sports and that kind of experience and environment, I always think to myself, if only there was camp like that for adults, I would be loving it right now. So I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, like, it's 2 months. Suck it up and enjoy this because you only get this opportunity once.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would have much of a ripple effect. But then again, I could actually spin that. So let's say I was less homesick and I was really, really enjoying camp.
Okay.
Then maybe I would have picked up and moved away from home sooner rather than later, and this whole opportunity never would have happened because I might have moved out here too quickly.
Yeah, no collider, baby.
I don't know. You never know.
These butterfly effects are huge. I could go on your camp one because I have some regret from, I went to a Catalina Island camp and there was these like badges that you could take, and you had to do this really crazy, that like it leads up to get all these badges, and then this really crazy badge in sailing where they like drop the sail and jump in the water and you have to fix everything. And because of whatever reason, it was bad timing, like it was too windy, we couldn't get out, the seas were a little bit rough, and I was really nervous about it, and it just for some reason I never got to complete that. I would love to go back and like really just go, you know, like get through that fear and just do it again. And because I think it ended and I was like, oh, then the next day you're leaving. And I was like, that's one of my major regrets, is not getting that sailing badge. So maybe I'll go back in time and get that.
But if you got a sailing badge, maybe you would buy a boat and live on a boat and not be here. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'm just making stuff up now.
You never know. Okay, what is a big like history thing where obviously they would push back against you, and it would, I mean, the obvious one, I would probably do Kennedy as well.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's like, I'll get all history sweaty on you. Stop the assassination of the Archduke Francis Ferdinand that started World War I. Because that was the Great War. We're talking about like the war to end all wars. Like, I wonder, would that stop all wars? Probably not.
But no, I mean, if this book is any indication, because clearly Stephen King is the definitive source of how time travel works.
He
like
is.
In that world, at least,
Yeah.
you're still kind of screwed.
I'd be pretty screwed though, but that's going back into the 1900s, the early 1900s. I don't know if I can hang in that time.
Maybe the butterfly effect would ultimately wind down, and we would kind of right itself so many years later.
I don't know. It's crazy. Man.
Who knows? I think the moral of this conversation, and maybe even the book to some degree, is kind of to appreciate the moment. And, especially having this portion of the conversation, it makes you appreciate some of the tougher times that you wish you could change, but instead you use those tougher times to influence the now instead in a positive way and to learn from it.
Yeah, that's what this story is. I mean, it's like, well, Al is the kind of the Obi-Wan to Jake's Luke, in the sense that he gives him the magic, the supernatural element to cross the threshold and go on the adventure, right? It's called adventure. But that adventure is based off of Al saying, you got to do this. You got to save the world. And do you? I mean, the idea is that the treasure was always there, that you're leaving, but like you're not looking around you going, no, it's all here.
Yeah.
I don't need to change the world. And I think that's a big theme in Stephen King's book that he uses to great degree to build a mythology, which is these gatekeepers of time, but also the butterfly effect and what, like, is the future going to be better or worse by changing something in the past? And that's what is so interesting about this book. But then on top of it, that romance with Sadie. I mean, so
it's also powerful. It's a lot to think about, and that's pretty much why I am sticking in Stephen King land right now. I am on to Salem's Lot at the moment.
Salem's Lot, that's a good one.
Are you reading anything right now?
I'm reading Thrawn Alliance.
I will get there eventually too, but not until I kick the Stephen King bug, which I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, to be honest.
The Stephen King bug. I actually have Tommyknockers next to my bed that I kind of want to read again.
I got to get into that.
I read that years ago, but when I was cleaning out my grandmother's house, I found that book and I was like, I kind of want to read that, so I might look at it.
Oh, the list goes on and on. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get to discuss more Stephen King books right here on the channel soon, because this was so much fun.
This was so great.
Thank you for doing this with me.
My pleasure. This is anytime.
I have a special Patreon shout out to give right now, because this video was a result of a suggestion from Evan Lee, who knows that I've been reading Stephen King, and he suggested doing a video about 11/20/263, and when he proposed that idea, I'm like, this is the reason to bring Mark Reilly on this YouTube channel.
That's perfect.
The
Good
funny
suggestion.
thing is, what you guys don't know right now is that we're not the only ones in the room.
No.
Dewey obviously is sleeping on the floor, but our eye line is Pennywise. There's the giant Pennywise standee right behind the camera. He's judging us right now, so yeah. How's that making you feel?
Yeah, I just noticed him. Stop it!
I'm glad you just noticed him at the end of the video, because otherwise that would have been weird.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching this. Like and share it. We will see you soon.